Our session today is about career fair preparation for international students. And today we'll be focusing on designing a workshop using the strengths-based advising theory. And this workshop was developed and delivered to you by the Career Development Committee for International Students at UW-Madison. My name is Cui-Dowling and I use she, her pronouns. I am a program coordinator in the Maths department and part of the committee. And I will have the rest of my team to introduce themselves. Tanya, would you like to go next?
Sure. Good morning, everyone. My name is Tanya Hendricks-Cobb, and my role at UW-Madison, I am the graduate program manager for the master's at the Information School, where I tie in with this group. I'm the newest member of the committee, so learning from the experts here. I work with both domestic and international students in providing career services. So that's my connection there. And again, good morning.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Kacha Fischer. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm one of the international engagement coordinators at ISSS at UW-Madison. So I help plan and coordinate lots of different engagement opportunities for our international students.
Sarah, you're muted right now, honey. I can't hear you.
Oh, we still can't hear you. Maybe try making sure that your microphone is the right one. I'm not sure if you have headphones around or.
All right, well, Sarah, figuring out how she can connect with us again, and then we'll move forward to the next slide. And when she comes back, we'll have her introduce herself. Speaking of career fair development, we probably want to talk about how career services is done at UW-Madison. And on the next slide, I would like to know how career services look like at your institution. So for UW-Madison currently, just like everything else, career services are decentralized. With centers in schools and colleges, they have their own career offices, in addition to a variety of support structures in ISSS, a part of Kacha's role that she mentioned, provide programming for international students, and some of their career related. There are also academic departments like Tanya and I provide career services for our students, and also their student organizations and other locations around campus. UW career services are a little bit unbalanced with significant inequities across the schools and colleges in terms of staffing and resources. The challenge to that is students may not get the same access to the same amount of information that they need at their, depending on where or which college, what major they majored in. So the challenge for that is students will really have to figure out where to get information by themselves at decentralized campus, just like anything else that they need to do. So this is kind of like what the current situation is on campus. And this is why we started this committee, Career Development for International Students Committee, to try to centralize the services that we provide to international students by creating resources for international students and collaboration with other career offices and ISS. And also we provided trainings to advisors, similar to what training like this today, to help empower advisors, no matter in career services community or the international education community, and to provide more career development resources for the international students. And on the next slide, there are two questions that we would like to ask you. Since we don't have a big group, so feel free to unmute yourself and do a short introduction, or you can type your notes in the chat. And Tanya will help us to read the comments or any questions that you have from the chat. So there are two questions. What does career services for international students look like at your institution? And then also, what are some of the challenges that for you and also for your students are currently facing in the career development, kind of this broad field, considering like any parts of the career development journey? So feel free to unmute yourself or type your answers in the chat, and we'd like to know our audience a little bit better so we could mostly tailor our information to you.
Hi, so my name is Ing. I'm from UW-Milwaukee. So currently our career services are centralized into Career Resource and Planning Center, but I know different colleges, especially engineering and Lubar Business School, has separate like local career services offices helping the student too. And I don't think we have a specialized international student career development effort. We do partner with CPARC. We call the office every year in spring to do some specific workshops. It could be a series, it could be one workshop, just to indicate that the special needs for international students to understand, you know, the job hunting I don't know, steps in America is different. The resume, the difference between resume and a CV, and some other how to use LinkedIn and go global, you know, some different software to find jobs. So yeah, I'm really interested to know more about what Madison is doing. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you. And maybe a follow-up question. So what are some of the challenges that you face since you have a centralized office, career office on campus? So the challenges may be different from what UW-Madison is facing. So what are some of these that you're experiencing?
And we have a post in the chat that I can read if you'd like. So Vanessa Luther says, career services at UW River Falls provide support to all students, including international students. Career services works with ISSS to ensure they're provided correct guidance concerning CPT and OPT eligibility. They make sure they link their resources to the ISS website. So kind of centralized again there. Thank you, Vanessa. Okay, and then Leah says, I very recently moved from Lawrence University, small liberal arts, to UW-Madison ISS. Welcome, Lee. Thinking of Lawrence, one challenge is that there are very limited global employment advising opportunities offered, i.e. if a student doesn't want to stay in the US to work. That's a really good point. That's it in the chat right now.
Thank you, Tanya. Feel free to, as we go on, feel free to type in any of your thoughts, comments about the content that we go over, so we know what you're thinking, and so we can answer your questions as we're presenting information, or do it at the end of the presentation. All right, and then we'll move on to the next slide to see the kind of the presentation or overview.
Thank you, Sheen. So now I'll run you all through the structure of our session today. We already introduced ourselves and the topic, talked about that a little bit, but next we'll talk about some of the learning outcomes for this session. We'll share some of our hopes for our time together and set some expectations. And then we'll follow that up with talking about the theory that guided our work when creating this session, which is the strength-based advising theory. Then we'll have a chance to think a little bit deeper about the unique strengths that international students have, as well as maybe some room for growth that this population of students has when it comes to career services and career fair preparation. And then we'll split into breakout rooms for our small group activity, where you will begin creating an outline of a workshop, and that will last 10 to 15 minutes, depending on how much time we have. And then we'll have a chance to come back together, share what you created during the small group activity, and discuss any other ideas or questions that you came up with. And then, of course, we'll conclude the presentation with some recommendations and share some resources that we have compiled that you all can use in the future. And then we'll have some time for questions and comments at the end as well. So some of our hopes together this morning are, first, we want everyone to know that all levels of knowledge are welcome. You don't have to be an expert on career services or working with international students, although many of you are, to get something out of this presentation today. We also want to encourage everyone to use the chat function throughout the presentation. If you have any questions, feel free to type those in the chat. And at certain points during our presentation, we'll also ask you to share your thoughts in the chat like we already did earlier. We'll try to answer questions as they come, but if we don't get to those, we'll address them at the end as well. We also want to give you a heads up and reiterate that during the small group activity, we will be going into breakout rooms, but there will be a reflection question to ponder in the main room if you don't feel comfortable joining a breakout room today for whatever reason. And finally, we want to emphasize that we don't have all the answers. We are by no means experts on this topic, but we're passionate about it and think it's important to talk about. So we hope we can still serve as helpful resources and learn together today. And so here are our learning outcomes. By the end of the presentation today, we hope you'll walk away with a list of topics relating to career fair prep for international students, which could maybe someday be good for a programming series on the topic in your office. Hope you get the chance to have some good discussion with colleagues and fellow international educators about providing information for international students in this context of career fairs. And lastly, we hope you'll leave the session today with the beginning or a part of an outline of a career fair prep workshop for international students. And this part is important. You know, we could have just done a presentation without the workshop creation element, but we really want participants to leave the session today with some real tools to support international students with this important part of their university experience, which is career fairs. So now I'll pass it off to my colleague, Sarah. No.
Okay, can people hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, I am so sorry. I have no idea what's going on with my Zoom audio, but my name is Sarah. I'm a graduate admissions and recruitment coordinator within a program within the School of Medicine and Public Health here at UW-Madison. And so right now we're going to transition into talking about framing theories and really understanding how different frameworks can help us understand how to help international students prepare for career fairs as well as career development in general. Next slide, please. And so the one that we're really going to focus on today is strengths-based advising. And so just a little bit of background about strengths-based advising. This was really developed as a way to kind of counter deficit-based advising strategies for students. And so it really is a 5-step model that focuses on helping students identify their talents and then looking at how that will help them in the future. So the first step is really identifying students' talents. And so this could be a variety of different things and will likely vary from student to student. After that, it's really focusing on affirming students' talents and helping them become aware of what their strengths are. Once they're more aware of what their strengths are, they'll really be able to utilize and draw on them in the future, especially as it relates to career preparation and taking steps that will help them in the future. So this kind of transitions to step 3, which is really envisioning the future, looking at what they want their future to look like, things they hope to accomplish, and then into step 4, which is planning for specific goals, both short and long term. And it's also expected that while students are looking at the future, planning goals, preparing, that they will face challenges. So kind of the final step of this is really looking at student strengths and how that has helped them face and overcome challenges in the past. So this will be different for every student. It could be taking initiative or becoming more comfortable, going out of their comfort zone, and how that will help them preparing for a variety of different things, but specifically here, career preparation. Next slide, please. And so if we look at this from the specific lens of career preparation, really understanding how strengths-based advising will help international students. So first of all, when students kind of envision the future and what they want to learn, it's really important that they first identify their strengths and talents as they're coming to a new a new country, it often will have different cultural norms or processes related with finding a job or identifying career exploration tips. And so first starting out with identifying international students' talents and strengths is going to be really helpful in giving students a confidence boost and really helping them understand what their strengths are. So for instance, if we take taking initiative or going out of your comfort zone, international students do that every day, not only in the college application process, but also coming to campus and kind of exploring college, but also a new culture. So affirming that as a strength or talent, helping students become aware of that, how that has helped them in the past and how that will continue to help them in the future. So then when thinking about the future and specific goals, the talents that they have, whether that's taking initiative, getting out of their comfort zone, could be applied to both short and long-term goals. So a short-term goal could be finding an internship. This internship will help them get experience. And so they might have to network to get the internship, put themselves out of their comfort zone, apply to a lot of different internships, things like that. And the long-term goal associated with that could be using what they learned in the internship to help them get a career in the future, to get more experience, to learn more, potentially go to grad school, things like that. And so really helping students understand what their strengths and talents are, identifying them, and utilizing them when preparing for different goals in the future is going to be really helpful. Understanding that, of course, students will face challenges along the way, but really utilizing what we've learned and their strengths and talents to understand how they can overcome them. And I think providing them with examples or helping them reflect and see how they've overcome things in the past is going to be really, really helpful. And so that's just a little bit of a framework about strengths-based advising. But with that, I will be passing it over to my colleague now.
Yeah, so in the spirit of strength-based advising, which Sarah just explained, we're going to take a moment to think a little bit deeper about the unique strengths that international students have. And this will sort of help frame the remainder of the workshop that you will create. So what are some of the strengths and talents that international students might have, and also consider what are some of the learning opportunities or room for growth that they may have in this area. And you can feel free to type your thoughts in the chat, or since we have a smaller group today, feel free to raise your hand, unmute to share your ideas.
I just wanted to add that it's perfectly okay to guess. We can brainstorm here too. So if you just have thoughts or ideas, don't worry about it being exact or right. We're kind of thinking through this together.
And I'll share a few of the talents and strengths that we came up as a committee. So feel free to add on to that list. Some of the things that we thought about were the students, their language skills, right? Multilingual, bilingual, and also their experience, the communication across differences. And some of the learning opportunities are getting more familiar with the US job search process, and to learn not being afraid to ask for help. So these are some of the talents and also learning opportunities that we thought as a community. So feel free to type your thoughts in the chat based on your experience working with a particular student or with the international students in general.
I just wanted to point out that Lee put some great examples in the chat, and I wasn't sure, G or Kacha, which one of us would be reading those, or?
Yeah, you can go ahead.
Oh, okay. So we mentioned strengths, some similar to what you just said. Some may have a second or third language fluency. They have the ability to adapt to new situations effectively, and an understanding of how to view problems and challenges from different perspectives, cultural or otherwise. Those are great. And then Jing said, I think the strength is how determined they are and how much effort they're putting into the process. Also 100%, absolutely.
Yeah, those are really great. And we came up with similar similar ideas too. That's really great. Thank you everyone for sharing. And feel free to keep putting those ideas in the chat as they come to you throughout the presentation. Great, so now I think I will pass it off to Sarah.
Perfect. Can everyone hear me again? Okay, awesome. So this next part of the presentation, as we mentioned before, we definitely want you all to get your own opportunity to create an outline for a workshop for international students. So my colleague Tanya is actually going to put a link to the small group activity in the chat. And so once you get that, just make sure you have access to it. Next slide, please. Perfect. And so again, right now, I really just want to make sure that people have access to it. So if something's not looking right, definitely feel free to just put that in the chat. But I really want to preface this. I know Kacha mentioned this earlier. There will be an option to stay in the main room. So we will go over the worksheet. We have developed a little bit of an example just to give you an idea of what we hope you all can take away from this. But I really want to preface that this definitely took us longer than the time we will be giving you all. So really just get through what you can if there's anything you find interesting or anything like that. But I'm now going to pass it over to my colleague Sheen to provide information about our example.
Thank you, Sarah and Kacha. We'll switch the screen to the small group activity sheet that Tanya just sent the link to the chat. We will go over this, the small activity sheet following Kacha's screen. So make sure you have access to this as well, because you will later need to type in your thoughts into this document. But for now, we will just take a look on the screen, on the shared screen. So I'll go over the instructions briefly and then give you all an example of how we use this to develop a sample workshop on one of the topics. So the first step when you get in a small group is just to introduce yourself, your name, your title, who you're working with, whatever that's on your mind today. So introduce yourself with your small group. And then the second step is choose the career topic from the table, the list down below. These are some of the topics that we came up with as a committee, thinking about career fair preparation before, during, after, and also virtual versus in person. Some of the topics include resume. Before the career fair, how do you want to deliver a resume workshop to international students, and how that differs to a workshop to all students, domestic students, right? So these are the topics that we came up with. Feel free to use any of these or any other topics about career fair preparation that you want to pick. Feel free to do whatever that is that works for your small group. And then the next step is step 3, that is for us to kind of think about, Kacha, if you would like to scroll down to step 3, is to keep in mind of the students' talents and the learning opportunities. This is why we have this activity for everybody to think about students' talents. It feels good to be affirmed, right? And then these are the talents that students may not even be aware of. They have these talents and strengths, but they may not be aware of or they don't feel comfortable talking about these. But this is important. This is important for them to feel more confident, empower them to go through the job searching process. And we want to let students know that their experience are being appreciated, valued here too. So these are some of the talents, strengths that we think international students have. Keep this in mind while developing your workshop to create some of the learning opportunities. This way, this workshop is really tailored to the needs of international students. I think what you mentioned that there's no specific, like no designated international student career advisor. So they're kind of the workshop and resources all kind of the one size fits all. So this model, the strength-based and learning opportunity, this model is really created to show appreciation of the international student experience, whatever the talents that they have. So this workshop is most tailored for the needs of international students. So keep this in mind while you are developing the workshop. And the next step is to refer to the adapted strength-based advising framework. Because of the limited time that we have, today the small workshop will be only focusing on the step 5, plan specific steps to reach goals. Whatever the topic is, that will be the goal for the workshop that you're going to develop. And apply student strengths to challenges, meaning think about how you can incorporate student strengths to create learning opportunities to talk about the topic that of your choice. And then the fifth step is to go to the table that we created for you, so you can type in your notes, your thoughts into the group. Later, you will be assigned. So we're going to take a look at the sample workshop that we created. The topic that we chose was how to approach recruiters at a career fair. We thought it was an interesting but also important topic for students to be aware of, to know how to do that. I'm sorry if you're hearing construction kind of noise. My building, next to my building, is doing construction work. Sorry about that. And this topic, because I personally went to career fairs and I felt intimidated because I didn't know, like, what do I do when I stand in a line when I'm about to talk to recruiters? And so we decided to choose this topic to talk this particular this norm with students. So here are some of the activities that we plan to do in this workshop. First, we'll begin by doing a culture comparison exercise. A lot of times, national students' experience are not being recognized, appreciated in the United States, no matter in the classroom or outside the classroom setting. So we want to acknowledge that their experience matters, even though it's in a different culture, in a different context. So we want to ask the students, how will you approach someone in a formal setting in your home country? So think about your interaction with your teacher, instructors, your supervisors, your elders. After students share, and we'll then compare their responses with what are some of the norms in the United States. In this way, we're building on to their experience instead of start from the scratch, telling them what it is here, right? Because some of the norms may overlap. And then we'll create a list of do's and don'ts when talking to recruiters with students. Some of the things that you should do beforehand, for example, researching a company and telling students how to do that, and some of the don'ts. That is definitely, you should not do at career fairs in the United States, right? And then we want students to be able to practice this at a safe environment in this workshop. So we wanted to demonstrate how students do a handshake by demonstrating examples, some of the good handshakes, some of the handshake we want to avoid. And then students will then have the opportunity to do a role play approaching a recruiter using the information they have gathered. One student would be the recruiter, the other student will be the student, and they will switch afterwards. And then they can practice standing in line, reaching hands to shake hands, and also elevator pitch, ask for contact information. Whatever that the entire process looks like, they can practice at a workshop. So it's a safe environment for them to make mistakes, to learn, to practice with their peers. And lastly, to wrap up this activity, we want to ask the students, what are some of the strengths that they have demonstrated in this activity? Either the strength that they incorporated in their elevator pitch or the strength they demonstrated while talking to recruiters. For example, they felt confident and they were nervous, but they overcome their nervous. things like that. We want students to be aware of their strength and also be more comfortable talking about them so they feel more empowered when talking to recruiters. So these are kind of the short, like the sample workshop that we did, incorporating student strengths to develop learning opportunities about approaching recruiters at a career fair. And then we would like you all in your small group to do a similar kind of activity for the topic that you choose. Just quickly go over the steps again when you go into your small groups. First, to introduce yourself to your group member, and also second, choose a topic. And 3, think about, have these strengths and then learning opportunities in mind, and focus on the fifth step in the strength-based advising framework, and then type in your answers for some of your ideas in your designated group. So this is, and then we'll go back to the presentation, and then our team will give us instructions how we break into small groups.
Could you possibly go back to the blank worksheet that each group's going to fill out, just so they can kind of see the steps in the worksheet?
So Kacha has showed what is the empty group sheet that looks like. You will type in your name, the topic of your choice, and also some of your ideas under that, the activity, that column. Feel free to follow these questions, or just kind of any ideas that you have, not necessarily to answer these questions, whatever that works for your small group.
Thanks.
Thanks, Kacha.
All right. Are we ready to open the breakout rooms, presenters?
Yep, that sounds great. So there'll be about 4 people in each room, and you'll have just under 10 minutes, and a member of the committee will be stopping shortly just to make sure you have to see if you have any questions, but feel free to join your group or leave.
Okay, it looks like people are back in the main room. Sorry that we really ran out of time. So I'm sorry if you didn't get enough time to chat as you would have liked. And it's okay if you did not get through the whole creating step 5 of the workshop. So no worries, but we still want to invite everyone to share anything they talked about that was interesting, noteworthy, or any ideas that you had about the workshop or the activity that you created. We hope you found it useful. And thank you for participating. So yeah, feel free to type things in the chat, raise your hand, unmute.
Yeah, I guess I can jump in. So full disclosure, we really didn't get very deep into the process at all, but we did. I thought it headed down the path of a really good discussion, and Jen kind of educated us on sort of the different approach to resumes from the perspective of an international student versus a U.S. student, and how we kind of coach students on developing resumes, and how international students would probably come into that with a very, very different perspective. So just that little bit of discussion that we were able to have was really eye-opening for me. Really appreciated it, and could certainly be the basis for, how we approach coaching international students on developing resumes as part of this overall jobs or career fair prep program.
That's great. Thank you, Jeff. Leah?
So our group also didn't get very far into the process, but we had a good conversation about virtual versus in person. And we decided if we were going to design a program right now, we'd probably still stick with virtual, and that we really like the strengths-based approach. So thank you all for sharing that with us today. We'll try to apply it to help support our students as they think about going forward, whether it's in their home country or here in the US.
That's great. Oh, well, since we only have a few minutes left, I think I will pass it off to Sheen to wrap up our presentation. But thank you everyone for participating and sharing your ideas and what you talked about in the small group.
To wrap up, there's a few recommendations that we have listed on this page, and I'll briefly kind of go over it. So office collaboration is the key, collaborating with your career offices or an ISS office to really fill in gaps between like each office and service that you provide. And also consider culture context for students. Support students through affirmation. I don't know y'all, I feel good when people tell me that I'm doing good, that strength that I have. So deliver that to your students to make them feel good too. And encourage your students to be more open-minded about opportunities. They may not get their first like dream job out of college, but they may have something that they can do for now and then to build on that experience later. And then to connect students with their career services on campus, no matter what is provided. And then the next steps are, we have created a resource worksheet, and Tanya will help us to put in the chat. And then Kacha will share the screen of the resource sheet. I just want to briefly go over of the information that we have in this resource sheet. The first part is the work authorization script. The ISS office UW-Madison has established the script that students can share with their employers, so they have the language that they can use right away to fill in the specific information for in their specific situation. So feel free to take any of this information from this resource sheet. That's the work authorization script. And then we also listed the strength-based advising framework. Later, you can use career fair preparation topics at the end, and some of the other resources here we use at UW-Madison or just kind of online in general. So feel free to use any of these resources, and then we'll share this handout with the WAIE so you can access this later too. That was kind of like a very quick wrap up. We are at time. I don't know how much time we can have for questions or comments. Maybe just a minute or two if you have time to stay, and then we'll take a few questions at the end. But if you have to leave, thank you so much for coming to our session. We really appreciate you being here, supporting national students, and feel free to connect to any one of us if you have any questions. Yes, Tanya.
I was going to say, Shane, we were thinking it'd be great if you put your name and email as the leader of our group in the chat. So if people want to follow up and have further discussion.
Thank you, Tanya. Thank you. Any questions or comments? If not, thank you so much for coming. I'm going to type in my, I typed in my email to the chat. Feel free to connect with me if you have any further questions. Well, thank you all.